Aung San Suu Kyi, a sharp reversal of the significant, if uneven, progress towards democracy the Southeast nation has made following 5 decades of military rule. This military coup took place early this morning as the country's leader Aung San Suu Kyi was detained. In this early morning raid, the army said it had carried out the detentions in response to election fraud, handing power to a military chief. The announcement on the local television followed days of concern about the threat of a military coup and comes as the country's new parliament session was to begin. Myanmar's former general, who had been appointed acting president by the country's military after it staged this coup, transferred power to the army chief. Myanmar's military seizing power today in this coup against the democratically elected government of Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, who was detained along with other leaders of her National League for Democracy party in early morning raids today. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on Myanmar's military leaders to release civilian leaders and others detained in overnight raids in the country. Snowfall picked up today in the northeast as the region braced for a whopper of a storm that could dump well over a foot of snow in many areas and create a blizzard-like conditions and cause travel problems for the next few days. It is a powerful winter storm that is set to dump feet of snow along a stretch of the U.S. East Coast, including New York City, after blanketing the nation's capital. Infectious disease experts are saying that the nation is facing Category 5 storms as the new and more infectious coronavirus variant, first detected in the United Kingdom, spreads in the United States. President Biden invited a group of Republican senators to meet with him today to discuss his $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief plan and their $600 billion counter-proposal. Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 single-shot vaccine shown to be 66% effective in preventing moderate and severe disease in a global phase 3 trial, but 85% effective against severe diseases. Younger children could begin to be vaccinated by late spring or early summer. That's the hope from the Biden administration, according to Dr. Anthony Fauci. And former President Trump announced a new impeachment legal defense team just a day after it was revealed that he had parted ways with an earlier set of attorneys with just over a week to go before his Senate trial. 5 attorneys who were prepared to defend former President Trump in this upcoming Senate impeachment trial have departed his legal team. And the former president announced his new legal defense team for his Senate impeachment, which is scheduled to begin on the 8th of this month. Meanwhile, 2 pipe bombs that were found near the Democratic and Republican Party headquarters on the 6th of January were planted the night before the insurrection at the Capitol, this according to the FBI. Russian state prosecutors said they would back an effort to jail opposition politician Alexei Navalny for up to 3.5 years at a court hearing, as the Kremlin said it would not heed U.S. complaints about this case. Chanting slogans against President Putin, tens of thousands took to the streets yesterday across Russia to demand the release of jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny, keeping up nationwide protests that have rattled the Kremlin. More than 5,100 people were detained by police, according to a monitoring group. And a Moscow court has ordered the wife of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny to pay a fine of 20,000 rubles for violating protest regulations after she attended a demonstration in the Russian capital to demand his release. Lebanon's militant Hezbollah group said its fighters shot down an Israeli drone over a southern village near the border with Israel. The Israeli military did not confirm the shootdown, but said a drone had crashed on Lebanese territory. Ethiopian and Eritrean forces have waged a devastating and genocidal war in Ethiopia's Tigray region, according to the region's ousted leader this morning. And delegates from Libya's opposing sides kicked off a 5-day meeting today to choose an interim prime minister and a 3-person presidency council in a bid to reunite the troubled oil-rich country before an election in December. 2 students have been arrested in Turkey on charges of inciting hatred and insulting religious values over a poster depicting Islam's most sacred site, the Kaaba, with LGBT flags. And a gun battle between militant Islamists and Somali security forces at a hotel in the capital of Mogadishu is now over. At least 5 people killed in this attack at the Afrik Hotel, which began with a car bomb yesterday. Oman extending the closure of its land borders for another week to curb the spread of the coronavirus. And 2 people in southern England have tested positive for the South African variant of the coronavirus without having any links to people who have travelled recently, prompting surge testing to contain that outbreak. Britain has recorded 587 deaths, down from 1,200 on Saturday, and a further 21,000 cases of the disease, also a decrease from a day earlier. A new lockdown to curb COVID-19 virus in France can only be a last resort, and 2 million Australians have begun their first full day of a strict lockdown following the discovery of one case in the community in Perth, the capital of Western Australian state. South Korea will extend its social distancing curbs by 2 weeks until the end of the Lunar New Year holiday as the infection clusters emerge in the country. And Vietnam has shut schools in 22 provinces ahead of the Lunar New Year Tet holiday and ended a ruling Communist Party Congress early this morning following the detection of a new cluster of coronavirus cases in northern areas last week. A World Health Organization team led investigating origins of the COVID-19 pandemic visited the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in China's central region of Hubei, where the outbreak emerged in late 2019. British troops are being commanded by a Chinese officer for the first time. The 300 British troops deployed to counter Islamist violence in Mali will work under a Chinese sector commander as part of the United Nations force. And 6 Chinese fighter aircrafts and a U.S. reconnaissance aircraft entered the southwestern corner of Taiwan's air defense identification zone in an unusual admission of U.S. military activity. Hong Kong media tycoon and Beijing critic Jimmy Lai, the most high-profile person charged under the national security law, would remain in custody after the city's top court said it would announce its verdict on his bail application at a later date. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. The U.S. and India have held discussions on F-15EX fighter jets, and the two respective air forces have exchanged information about it, according to a top Boeing official, after the aerospace major received approval from the American government to offer its latest multi-role combat aircraft to the Indian Air Force. There was no big bang increase in the overall defense budget, but India did spend an additional unbudgeted over 20,000 crore rupees on emergency arms procurements in the current fiscal in face of China's ongoing belligerence on the northern border, especially in eastern Ladakh. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the union budget in Parliament today, and she presented this budget with a focus on 6 pillars to energize the economy, which has been battered by the pandemic. It is this probably the toughest budget yet for Prime Minister Modi as his government navigates the twin challenges of steering the $2.7 trillion Indian economy out of an unprecedented recession while ensuring more resources to fight the century's worst pandemic. He hailed the union budget and said it was the vision of Atmanirbharta, self-reliance, and addresses all sections of the society. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi hit out at the centre following the presentation of this budget, alleging that the Modi government plans to hand over India's assets to crony capitalists. Several senior Indian journalists are facing charges of sedition over their reporting in online posts about a protest by farmers last week, sparking criticism of the legal action from media as well as associations. The government extended temporary suspension of internet services at 3 Delhi borders, and the Delhi High Court dismissed a PIL seeking action against the police and intelligence officials concerned for their failure in anticipating and controlling the farmers' protest on Republic Day, leading to the forced entry into the Red Fort. India was able to fight the COVID-19 pandemic much better than other countries because of its whole of government and whole of society approach, as India's weekly death toll from the COVID-19 pandemic fell below 1,000 for the first time since the first week of May last year. With a consistent rise in recoveries, India's COVID-19 recovery rate has reached 97%. Members of the touring England cricket team have returned 3 negative tests for COVID-19 during their 6-day quarantine, clearing the way for their first training session 3 days before the opening test against India begins in Chennai on Friday. The BCCI and the Tamil Nadu Cricket Association have decided to allow 50% spectators at the second India-England test to be held at the Chidambaram Stadium in Chennai. And Pakistan head coach Misbah-ul Haq doesn't want his team to get complacent ahead of this week's second test match against South Africa. The cricket teams of both countries arrived in Islamabad by a special Pakistan International Airlines flight from Karachi last night. And a flight steward of Pakistan International Airlines has reportedly went missing in Canada soon after the airline's flight PK798 landed in Toronto on Friday. The first batch of COVID-19 vaccines has arrived in Pakistan, including 500,000 doses of the vaccine that has been brought from China in a special Pakistan Air Force aircraft. And Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said that the arrival of this first batch of vaccines from Beijing was practical proof of the Pakistan-China friendship. Thanks to the Chinese donation, Pakistan will hopefully kickstart this COVID-19 vaccination drive this week, administering 500,000 doses to public healthcare workers. Pakistan has reported over 1,200 recoveries during the last 24 hours. And we do have Prime Minister Imran Khan congratulating the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government for providing free health coverage to all residents of the province under the Sehat Sahulat program. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that I have in the news for you on this first day